Well, once again, it is back-to-back wins for Red Bull and for once they've done back-to-back wins around the streets of Monaco. Sadly, this time it wasn't Sergio Perez, as instead of kissing the P1 trophy, he kissed the barriers. Welcome back to Grid Talk. My name is Tom Downey, and joining me today to review the race around Monaco, we have Owain Medford.
Hello.
And we have our very own Alex Booth.
Good afternoon.
Hello, chaps. Just before we get into this episode, we must thank our sponsor, Bet Online. So Bet Online is your number one source for all your basketball info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines and the latest matchup reports with this year's NBA basketball playoffs. Bet Online is your sports intel headquarters this season, as we have you covered for all your insider sports wagering needs, from basketball, MLB, NHL hockey, golf, to UFC and boxing. The fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favourite casino and card games available to play right from your home. Get right into the action today. So head to the website or use your mobile device to join. And be sure to use our promo code BLEAV, that is BLEAV, to receive your 50% bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts. Just before we begin, if you enjoy this podcast as well, we'd love it if you could take 5 to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Also, if you're not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing to us and help us out with a like and a comment on any videos you enjoy. So now that the admin is out the way, chaps, once again, Monaco. Whoever says can't overtake around Monaco, right? Somebody tell Hulkenberg. So Owen, I'll go to you first. Max, P1, interesting race. How do you rate his performance today?
I mean, I think in comparison to every other driver, it was classic Max, really. He did seem to have, he had a bit of a tricky start to the weekend. But by the time he got into his stride, obviously, he smashed it in Verstappen. Sorry, not Verstappen, sorry, in qualifying. Don't know why I said... Well, I said Verstappen there. He tagged the wall, tagged the inside of the swimming pool on the way out of it with his end plate. Needed repair on that, and then and then clonked the barrier on the pit straight. And I thought, well, that's probably him. That's all the sort of clashes with the barriers that he'll have all weekend. But no, he did a similar thing in the race. He was tagging barriers left and right. But I think it's the mark of a champion in some ways that he's pushing it to the absolute limit and extracting exactly what he needed out of the car, and obviously came home to take a sort of a masterful victory, really. I think he was driving well within sort of the limits that he needed to, but he was pushed to be kept honest by Alonso there. He's taken a really good victory out of it in honestly quite very, very difficult conditions. The managing of the tyres, managing of that transition, particularly on the mediums for him, from slicks onto the inters, particularly when the top of the circuit was getting towards being flooded. It'd be easy to throw it in the barrier if you're a less experienced racer, but he did an amazing job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've made a very good point by sort of underlining his credentials as a champion with a drive like that. But Alex, in P2, the aforementioned Fernando Alonso was chasing down Max, seemed to be closing the gap when Max's mediums was seemingly beginning to run out of grip. Ultimately, he finished 27.9 seconds behind him. Obviously, the weather didn't help, but... how do you rate Fernando's performance today? What do you think he could have done perhaps differently to maybe snatch his first win for the best part of 10 years now?
I don't think there was an awful lot he could have done, to be perfectly honest. I mean, he didn't get the start that he would have needed. If he'd have got ahead of Verstappen at the start, it could have been a different story. Where it really started to go out of Aston Martin's hands was he pitted when it really should have been, looking back now, choosing intermediate tyres. Instead, he went out on dry tyres to do another lap and then came in for intermediates again. Had Aston Martin not done that, it could have been a lot closer. I'm not sure whether victory would have been the result, but he certainly would have been in it a lot more. He gave it all he could. Earlier in the race, when Verstappen hit traffic, Alonso used that opportunity to put pressure on him. The gap was getting smaller, and you could see that was getting into the Red Bull mind a little bit. But yeah, as soon as it started raining, that was a missed opportunity for them, I think. And then once Max got in his stride on the intermediate tyres, and especially after Alonso pitting 3 times twice, as opposed to once, that signalled P2 for him. But another podium, second place, consolidating their consistent streak. All around a good result. But I think it was potentially a missed opportunity for them.
Yeah, and you do wonder how many more of these missed opportunities Alonso's going to be happy with before he starts throwing his toys out the pram, because he always gets on so well when things don't go his way. Just ask McLaren and every other team he's ever raced for. Speaking of which, Owain, P3, Fernando's former absolute best mate. They never had any sort of bickerments or anything. Esteban Ocon, first podium this season. Brilliant quality yesterday, as has been discussed. I mean, almost a bit of a nothing race, as harsh as that sounds. But P3 for Alpine. Laurent Rossi have that one. They were saying they need better results. How'd you rate him today? I mean, I've just waxed lyrical about him.
I mean, I'll put it this way: he's. You say it's a nothing race. It's Monaco. It's hard enough at the best of times. Laurent Rossi's probably going to come in and say that, well, I was the one that provided all the motivation to go and do better, but I don't think that's entirely the case. I think Alpine did an amazing job, keeping cool heads on the strategy, on the pit wall, and in the car. It's not easy. We've seen someone who's supposedly a master of street circuits with Perez. We've seen 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton, or we've had multiple people hitting the wall. Who are seasoned racing drivers, and obviously Ocon is one of them as well. He's been around long enough. He didn't put it into the barrier. He didn't, lose his head. They didn't throw away the opportunity that they had. He just drove as well as he needed to, defended well when he needed to. Didn't put it in the wall when so many other drivers did when it started to rain. And he's been rewarded for it with a 3rd place. It's as much as it's a nothing race, that's sort of a nothing race with nothing happening. That's almost what you want in these conditions. When it comes back to the sort of old adage, if you can keep your head when everyone else is losing theirs, then you'll do well out of it. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit by the end there, but that's exactly what they did, and it's a really great result for the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially after sort of such a diabolical start to the season they had, look at Bahrain, etc. This sort of turn in form is definitely coming at the right point for them. Speaking of a slight turn in form, Alex, let's do both Mercedes together. Lewis Hamilton, P4, and also took the fastest lap, and his teammate George Russell, P5. Obviously, side pods have come about this weekend, so that was a big talking point. How do you think? So how do you rate their weekend? Do you think they were much improved? Do you think they left a bit on the table, or where do you think Mercedes go from here? Because they're in a bit of a sort of lull at the minute, almost.
I think the way is up for them. I think as we get on some more circuits, because Monaco is obviously a strange circuit. Any performance gains you would struggle to notice there. So we'll see what happens in Barcelona next weekend. But I'm not sure they'll be reasonably satisfied, because it's a team that's used to winning multiple Grand Prix, and settling for 4th and 5th is certainly not where they want to be. Lewis got the fastest lap. He was flying actually when he put his new tyres on. I really did think he would probably be able to get ahead of Ocon, but it wasn't to be. And aside from saying the fastest lap, he was pretty anonymous, really. I mean, unlike his teammate Russell, he had more of a scrappy race. I think when he understandably made a mistake at Mirabeau in the conditions, but then came on a little bit too impatiently, really, and collected Perez. So I know it's really hard to see out of the cockpit, but a penalty for that was deserved. But I think Mercedes can take satisfaction that they believe that these upgrades do work, and give them time, and we'll see where we are. Hopefully, for the sake of the sport, if they can challenge Red Bull, it'd be great. I do think they still have a way to go, though.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, they've definitely made progress. It's easy to see, and you know, I will go on record and say this, even as a Max fan, I'm getting bored of him winning all the time. I want to see, I want to see other people challenging, and hopefully if we can get 2 or 3 teams back up there, you know, Aston and get Merc, and provided Ferrari don't implode, they may be up there, probably not this year. Speaking of Ferrari, Owain, yet another strategic masterclass from them this weekend. And good thing their drivers kept their noses clean all weekend, so they definitely didn't have any contact. Ferrari, give us your thoughts on Monaco. I'm just going to lead you in by this point.
I mean, I'll put it this way. This is I believe it's Charles Leclerc's most successful race in Monaco.
Yeah, he was 4th last year.
Oh, well, that's a shame. I thought he'd DNF'd a bunch. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, Leclerc did better out of it than anyone else. Well, he did better out of it over his teammate. I don't really know how that ended up playing out. I think he just got... Was it just a poor stop? I didn't really see Leclerc. He just appeared in front of Sainz, and that was kind of it. Who, by comparison, just had an awful race. Managing to go back in the field. I didn't really see Leclerc, but yeah, Sainz just absolutely could not hold it together. You know, they tried to put pressure onto Alpine, but it didn't work. Alpine obviously got the better of them, and then it only went backwards, and it only went sort of sideways from there on them. Really, I think it was so poor from Sainz, and then obviously the moment the rain came, then they double stopped, and that was his race over. He was essentially a sitting duck. Well, not a sitting duck, but he was hung out to dry. You know, his teammate passed him on the mediums, and by the time that it came back to the pit stop, it was over. So yeah, it's a bad race for Ferrari, yet again. It needs to be better. I mean, the science is clear. Like, it's just time and time again. It just seems that he can't. He doesn't have quite the luck. Which is a shame. But it's decent enough that he's obviously finishing 8th, but that's not good enough for a Ferrari.
I just want to add as well, you can see the element of frustration at Ferraris. I mean, look at Sainz's half-hearted attempt on Ocon early on, when he compromised his race a bit there by damaging the front wing. You know, it's errors like that are creeping in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's there was a real element of frustration, and then we also, it's a very good point, Alex. You know, we also heard the frustration when Sainz was shouting over the radio. So all is definitely not well at the Maranello team, and as funny as it is to sort of laugh at their decisions, I think most of us would agree that we do actually want to see them be somewhat competitive and not just competing against their own strategy team. But looking a little bit further down the grid, the next team we're going to talk about, I'm surprised that they are this high up. McLaren, Lando Norris P9 and Oscar Piastri P10. Alex, I'll go to you on this one, but as always, Owen, if you've got anything to add, please jump in. They did finish a lap. Both of them finished a lap down, but doesn't matter. Double points. They started P10, P11. Double points for McLaren when they probably need it. At every opportunity they can take this year. Do you think this is the start of a turnaround, or do you think Monaco is just perhaps disguising some of the issues that McLaren have in that car?
I'd like it to be, but I think it's more the latter. I do think that the nature of Monaco probably masked the deficiencies of the McLaren chassis. But good drive, both from Norris and Piastri. The weather played into their hands, and they were able to take advantage of Yuki Tsunoda's brake problems. 2 very impressive moves, actually, down the outside into Sandibot, taking advantage of the DRS, obviously. That was brave. They could easily have slid into the wall, going off the line, and they didn't, and they brought the cars home 9th and 10th, which, as you mentioned, McLaren need those points badly. I like the colour scheme, I have to say. I'm quite enjoying seeing that. It's positive from McLaren, but and hopefully it brings the morale of the team.
Yeah, no. Apologies about that. Zoom just had an absolute moment. The wonders of technology, hey? It was beeping in my ear and all sorts. But yes, no, yeah, McLaren, you know, I also fear is the same, Alex. You know, where you said about it, you know, Monaco definitely masking some of the issues they've got, and you know, I think over the next few races we'll see their true pace. Just looking, sort of starting to look down the order a bit. Or actually, Owain, I just want to chat quickly about Pierre Gasly, P7 in the Alpine. After a sort of rocky start to his Alpine career, a much sort of improved performance from him this weekend. Ultimately finished where he started, but that's no bad thing. Solid points. Do you think that he and Ocon are beginning to work well together? The right noises are coming out of Team Enstone, but you know, that could obviously just be marketing going mad. So
yeah, I mean, you know, I think the most successful thing that they've done to date was the launch in their new Alpine road car that they're bringing out. You know, beyond this, prior to this point, it's just, you know, something to be said for Gasly that, you know, he did manage to keep Carlos Sainz behind. You know, is objectively in a faster car. Maybe not this. You know, maybe not this weekend, but you know, the form suggests that the Ferrari should be able to get past. Obviously, it is Monaco, so and Sainz is, you know, Sainz is was obviously clearly having a bit of a bit of a palaver of a race, whereas Gasly was having a drama of a race. You know, he finished, you know, in that Ferrari sandwich, and it's decent. You know, it's obviously not the heights of his teammate, but that's still a solid point score, and it really does walk them away from their rivals in the midfield, which is, again, yeah, hopefully it's sign of things to come. I guess we'll see on a more sort of conventional track, whether that form continues.
yeah, and this, you know, it'll be interesting to see how he gets on next week as well. You know, it's I hope for Gasly's sake that he can sort of get some good momentum, because I quite like him, but his last year at AlphaTauri, he didn't do himself any favors. But you know, he's moved to Alpine, which, you know, aside from their questionable reliability, sometimes can be a bit iffy. From here, I'm just going to sort of rattle through some of the other teams, because to be perfectly honest, you know, people who watch the race, obviously we don't see everybody. So I'm just going to touch on AlphaTauri quickly. Nick De Vries finished P12 after starting P12, and actually had, I'd say, his best weekend in F1 to date, even taking into account Monza from last year. He kept it clean the whole weekend, kept out the barriers, he made the right decisions, he didn't make any silly mistakes, and he kept it on the racetrack, in the hardest track that we have on the calendar. And then also his teammates, Yuki, I'm not sure if he actually did DNF or if he's, I think he's still classified, but yeah, I think he retired right at the end with brake issues, which we heard him brilliantly shouting about. Chaps, if you want to add anything to AlphaTauri, or should we just nod and move on?
Well, Tsunoda was classified 15th. I think he did actually make it across the line. He'll be upset because he was on course for a points finish, and he qualified well. But yeah, he was complaining about the brake issues on his car, and inevitably, when the weather gets like that in Monaco, you know, there's not really a lot you're going to be able to do other than just drive really slowly around. And so yeah, it's a shame for him. Nick De Vries, as you mentioned, could easily have made a mistake. It's very easy to do in those conditions, but he kept it clean and managed to finish P12, although he is still hoping for his first points finish in AlphaTauri.
Yeah. I just want to heap a little bit of praise onto Tsunoda, because, you know, I think maybe a slightly old, like, you know, 6 months ago, Yuki would have thrown it in the barrier with the locking brakes, but he didn't actually, you know, as much as it was going relatively slowly, he didn't end up down any escape roads that I saw. You know, I think he cut the chicane once maybe, but, you know, he had a really difficult job to do, and it looks like we haven't heard too much, but by the looks of things, it wasn't a case of him not getting the best out of the car. I think it was more of a technical issue that's afflicted him there. So the fact that he's still, the fact that he's managed to keep Sergio Perez behind, I think says a relatively large amount.
I think he went down the escape road at Mirabeau once, but that was battle again being down to the brakes because he had to do a 3-point turn to get back on the track.
Oh, of course he did. Yeah, how did I miss that? Of course, it's the one place as well where you can't do a spin turn, which you have to slowly reverse out, as we saw. I think
That's what George Russell do.
Yeah, George Russell do. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that is a good point about Yuki. Actually, apologies, I did him a bit of a disservice then because he was having a very good weekend, and I think it is worth noting actually that the AlphaTauri, I'd say it's probably the second worst car on the grid this year. I think the Williams is probably marginally worse than it. Maybe Alfa Romeo, but Alfa Romeo definitely in that mix, but. Last year, AlphaTauri had real brake issues because we heard both drivers complaining about it then. So, given the apparent issues with that car, certainly from my side, I'm going into a bit of a sort of panelist mode here, going a bit off piste. They've definitely got issues to work out, and that car is not doing any of their drivers any favor. So. So Yuki, aside from having those brake issues where he asks his engineer if you want me to crash, I thought they both did very well this weekend. But speaking of backmarkers, just quickly, Owain, Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu, they finished P11 and P13. I think Zhou had to box fairly early on because he had damage or something. I can't quite remember, but Bottas, out the points again. They're just a bit anonymous, and I think you alluded to it last time out that they're effectively just waiting for the Audi money now.
They must be. It's. I'll put it this way. I've got a race report. Just to peek behind the curtain. I've got a race report up to look at where if anything massively notable happened, and there is nothing to be said about Bottas or Zhou. I think the most things that we saw out of them were the damage that you saw, and that came from the start. You saw when they were sort of playing bumper cars down at the hairpin. I think that's the most that can be said of what they did. I think they've not. I think the best that can be said is that. Bottas gained 4 places. 2 of those would have been from Magnussen and Stroll, and obviously Tsunoda, who was really struggling, and Zhou gaining 6 places. I think that's that they've made a decent step forward, but obviously it's a decent step forward in a bit of a crazy race, but it wasn't towards any point, so it's been for nothing really. Bottas finishing just outside the point, so it's a bit disappointing for them really.
Yeah, it's not great for Alfa Romeo at the minute, and they've definitely slipped backwards from sort of 12 to 15 months ago. But also, just looking at some of the other finishers, I'll just mention Williams quickly. So Alex Albon ultimately finished P14, and Logan Sargent finished P18, the last of the classified runners. There's not really much to add on them. The Haas drivers, just very quickly. We'll go over those. Alex, so Nico Hulkenberg finished P17 and Kevin Magnussen DNF'd on lap 70. Kevin Magnussen was the only driver still on slicks when everybody was on wets and on inters and talking about going to full wets. And Hulkenberg just decided that he forgot how to brake into the hairpin and caused a collision. Haas on the 150th race in F1, which is kind of mad when you think about it already. Not exactly a weekend to remember for them, is it?
No, as you alluded to, Nico Hulkenberg was a bit of a do or die move on the opening lap, and he got himself in trouble with that. And then also he came in at the end of the lap, and then there was something wrong in the pits. I think the wheels were still turning, so the pit stop took a lot longer than it should have done anyway. So that was his race pretty much ruined already at that point. I can't for the life of me understand why Haas kept Magnussen out on slicks when the weather was like that for as long as they did. Maybe they were trying to wait for the right time to go straight to full wets, but clearly that didn't work. He ended up going off the track. So yeah, not a 150th Grand Prix to remember for Haas, which I think this could have been a race for them where they might have had the opportunity to sneak in the points. Their qualifying was pretty disastrous, but given the circumstances of how the race panned out, they'll look back on that and think, "Oh, we really made mistakes here." This was a lost opportunity for some much needed points.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's not really been a happy hunting ground for them in the last few years. But two other drivers to talk about, and I'm looking forward to this one because Owain, Sergio Perez, the only driver to box 5 times in this race, after having not an ideal qualifying. Off you go.
I don't know what they were thinking. I really don't. It was, he was less guinea pig and more lab rat. Like, it just, they boxed him on the first lap, and I thought, oh, that's fair. You could go to the end, and then I think the biggest thing, I think they got caught kind of radar watching. Everyone's the pace slowed down so much. He couldn't, he never made it through anyone, and then everyone was sort of just kind of backing up behind a couple of drivers, and then almost immediately his teammates on the back of him, and he's pit 5 times, and none of them have seemed to come out. They've all been in service of Max. And he then got hit by Russell, which definitely didn't help. It was a disaster of a race, and I can't really lump too much of the issues on Perez. I think he's done a fairly decent job, but ultimately, I think he's shown exactly what can happen if you do a poor job in qualifying. He's obviously spun it into the wall, and started from the back, and it's all gone downhill from there. It's a weekend to forget. I can't believe it was that bad. It's honestly unfathomably bad for Sergio Perez. I know some of it wasn't entirely his fault with being hit, but I think that's the kind of, sometimes those are the things you subject yourself to when you bin it in qualifying, and then do nothing about it in the race. It was just it was unmitigated disaster, really.
Don't forget, he's king of the streets, though, as people like to say. So yeah, it's not exactly a weekend to remember for him. Some slightly sour memories compared to 12 months ago. But Alex, I do apologise for this. Lance Stroll. I mean, it's like pulling out a Joker card by this point on this show. You have to talk about Stroll, and we do have to talk about Stroll because what on earth is what I'm going to say, and then just give us your thoughts on him.
Well, he had an absolute stinker, didn't he? I mean, he had his problems in qualifying, so he ended up languishing down the grid. And then I think he just tried. He tried too hard, really, to try and make amends for it. He went for a gap on the opening lap into the Lowe's hairpin that was about half the size of an Aston Martin, and ended up hitting the barrier. And then I think it was Logan Sargent he made contact with. Things started to pick up from there. He got into that gaggle where everybody was stuck behind Sargent. Then he had a collision with Sergio Perez when Verstappen was coming up to lap them. Then he had a collision with Kevin Magnussen. He just seemed to be hitting everybody that moved at one point. And then when the rain came, he had a bit of a confrontation with the barriers at Lowe's hairpin, and the front wing actually went under the car, which meant he couldn't turn into the next corner and hit the barrier again. So Lance will not be remembering Monaco 2023 in a hurry. He does need to pick up his performance, though, because we are seeing what Alonso is doing. I know Alonso is a major yardstick to have, but it shows that the car clearly has pace. And Australia aside, and Bahrain, I know he had his injury in Bahrain, so we can there was some circumstances with that, but he does need to pick it up because this was not a particularly good performance from Shaw.
Yes, that was pretty diplomatic, to be fair. I'd certainly been less forgiving, and I'd go as far as to say that he was better in Bahrain with 2 knackered wrists and some knackered ribs than he was today.
Let's be honest, it's not going to matter, though, is it?
Well, this is the thing, and I wanted to. I'm just conscious of time, obviously, because we've all got commitments outside of this. But I think that'll be something we'll get into probably another time. But it comes back to who owns and runs that team, doesn't it? So let's park that conversation for now.
All I say is it must be nice.
It
must be nice.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I think that could probably be an episode in itself. But we have had a question from one of our live stream viewers. So Jared Bradley, thank you so much for the question. Nice to see you back in chat, and I hope you are well. And I hope everything is well with you over there, sir. He said, as Monaco is a technical race where the car is less of an influence and the driver skill is more important, did the younger drivers show that they do have some ability, specifically Yuki, De Vries, and Piastri? So, Owain, I'll go to you quickly first.
I think so. I think one of the big things about Monaco, and all the great races, it's basically the Triple Crown weekend, or Triple Crown month really, is that the race is you're battling the race as well as your fellow competitors. You know, there's other tracks where the format of the race and the track and the circuit you're on means that you don't. You know, you can go off and it's not too bad. For example, if you're in France or even places like Silverstone, even, you know, as much as there's a lot higher stakes there than a lot of open circuits. Yeah, there's something to be said for the fact that you can save things. Monaco, there's nowhere to hide. It exposes all your faults, and it will do so over what was a 2-hour distance. You know, there's part of the unique challenge of Monte Carlo. I think the new drivers, the younger few on the grid, really showed that they could, take the battle to the race, as it were. Don't throw it in the wall. Don't throw it into your teammates. When a lot of other more experienced people had issues, and I think that says a lot about their racing skill and their racecraft.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. Alex, do you want to elaborate on? Oh, you don't. Sorry, let me rephrase. Do you want to expand on that at all?
Well, I completely agree. I think it's tantamount to the skill of the drivers. I mean, you know, we've always said that Formula One drivers, you know, they're the 20 best racing drivers in the world, and to have the Monaco Grand Prix in not particularly easy conditions, i.e., the rain falling towards in the later stage of the race, and to have only 2 retirements is testament to the skill of the drivers. And with regards to the 3 that we named, Tsunoda has vastly improved this season, I believe. De Vries, I think his confidence is low, which is not helping. But we know that he's definitely got ability as a racing driver. He's a Formula 2 champion, which you don't get into Formula 1 just like that. You know, you have to get there on merit, and he certainly has. Piastri, we all know that he's a talented driver. He was one of the most hotly anticipated young talents in recent times, and he brought it home in the points. Didn't make the only small error he made. He just kissed the barrier at one point, but again, you know, you can get away with that in Monaco if you're lucky enough to do that. I think the level is really good at the moment. I don't think there's a particularly bad driver in Formula One at the moment. They're all of decent quality, and the Monaco Grand Prix has gone to show that, because otherwise it would have just been a demolition derby had it not, and it certainly wasn't.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why F2 and F3 are for anyway. But yeah, that brings the review of our that brings our review of the 2023 Monaco Grand Prix to a close. Apologies if that sounds a bit rushed, just because Indy 500 is about to start as well. So just very quickly, I want to give yes, Owain, I did see that. Chaps, I want to give you both a chance to promo yourselves, anything that you may want to sort of shout out. So, Alex, who are you? Why are you in my house? Where can we find you? Please go away. Anything you'd like to promo?
No, not really. I'm still a little bit anonymous. I haven't done a lot of stuff, although I am appearing on these quite frequently. People may find me on Facebook, because I do comment on a lot of Formula One posts, and sometimes get people agreeing with me. Other times, the other group of people absolutely slaughter me. But which I quite enjoy correcting people on certain things. But yeah, I can be found, but again, I'm more than happy to come and join you on here.
Yeah, well, we love having you on, mate. You know, you always provide a good insight. And Owain, part of the furniture, where can we find you?
Here, that's where you can find me. That's
brilliant.
it.
That's what we like to hear. So just very quickly, for those of you who are listening and watching, Grid Talk is available on YouTube, where most episodes are recorded live, as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Casts. Just search Formula One Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to both qualifying and race results. Please consider supporting the channel on Patreon so we can get better mics, lights, and recording equipment. Also, as I mentioned earlier, please make sure you are subscribed so you're the first to know when each new episode is released. We will be back on, I believe, tomorrow to preview the Spanish Grand Prix, because that's going to be an absolute thriller. Thank you very much for listening to the Grid Talk podcast presented by Bet Online, and goodbye.